This is a public hearing to consider amendments to Title 17 of the Mason County Code regulating the production, processing, and retail sales of recreational marijuana. Presenting this item is our Director of Community Development, Barbara Atkins. Ms. Atkins?
Barbara Atkins, Department of Community Development. This is, well, the commissioners had originally a couple months back kind of put a moratorium on the Title 17 zoning recreational marijuana, which was lifted about a month afterwards with some direction to the Planning Advisory Commission to go back and take a couple of second looks at some items there. They had 2 public hearings. They came back with some recommendations that have gone forward to the board, and we've had several discussions during briefings, and what we're presenting today is kind of what culled out of all of those discussions with the draft that we have here now. So let me go through what the changes ended up being, at least for the starting off point right now.
First, I wanted to ask, we tried to make as many copies as we could available to this newest draft. Does everybody have a copy or need it? Anybody need a copy of that?
There was one I did yesterday.
You have enough?
So it's online. If I can.
Yeah, if possible, share if you can. We have a share.
Is it the one that is online? It's online as of yesterday afternoon. You checked yesterday when they got the original. And this is the staff.
We need to make more copies.
We have more right here.
Does everybody have one that would like one? And there's extras here. You can pass those forward. Those are extras. You can pass those forward. You can put them, sign in for them. Everybody can come in.
I'm sure.
Just put them on where we sign in.
We do have 2 representatives from the Planning Commission here, thankfully. I won't point them out. But as Commissioner Jeffers pointed out, it's kind of not even the same as what you saw, so it's gone through some changes. But to start, I'm gonna not refer to staff report because I don't think everybody has a copy of it, but talk directly about the attachment A, where you're going to see the changes in red. The first changes that you're going to see are on page 3 in section 17.17.005 called Development Standards. This is new. In this section, we've added a paragraph that references lighting. It's pretty simple. We will be discussing in the future perhaps a little something more detailed oriented when it comes to lighting with the Planning Commission, but at this point, what this is intended to do is basically to keep your light on your property and to not offend the neighbors. So we think that this does this without getting too overcomplicated. And B, B talks about the special use permit. As you'll see a little bit later on in some of the edits, there will be a requirement for any producer in the rural residential 5 will have to obtain a special use permit before proceeding to develop a recreational marijuana business. You can also get special use permits should your proposal deviate from the regulations. That is a process that is generally available to just about anybody who comes through and they have a project that doesn't fit into our codes. That is an option that a lot of people choose to go through to try to find a way to fit in. But it will be mandatory if this goes through for rural residential 5s. Buffers and setbacks. there will be, according to this recommendation, a 100-foot buffer from any portion of a production or processing operation to the nearest property line in all rural residential districts. A variance may be sought under Mason County Code 15.05, which is the article that discusses the variance process, and considered on an individual basis, which is standard for anybody who can't meet setbacks for different reasons on their property. They can go through that process to see about getting a variance. And that is C, but it doesn't have C. So further down on page 4, under 17.17.006, marijuana producer licenses, there have been some changes. Go to the third paragraph. You'll notice it says licensed indoor and outdoor. Marijuana producers are permitted in the following non-residential zoning districts. The language about residential has been removed and put in a different section. You can see that all references in red to residential were stricken from there. On the next page, on 5, you'll see where it's been put back in. This language in red in the middle of the page there is all new. Licensed indoor producers are permitted within the rural residential districts subject to the following restrictions. Level 1, minimum 5 acres. Level 2 and level 3, minimum 10 acres. Licensed indoor producers are permitted within rural residential districts on parcels 5 acres or larger, and all structures are required to meet the building regulations for floor area ratio, size, and height of non-agricultural and accessory buildings for each of the respective zoning districts in the rural residential area. Licensed indoor producers in rural residential 5 must obtain a special use permit. Outdoor production is prohibited in all rural residential districts. What this language means is that when you look into the rural residential section in our code, it talks about the size limitations for buildings that are residential, agricultural, non-agricultural, and there are no limitations on the size of ag buildings. So what this is doing is making sure that whether it's an ag building or not an ag building, they will all be treated as non-ag buildings, and they will be subject to the restrictions of the building size for non-ag buildings. Marijuana processors, which is the next section down, has been revised pretty much similarly. The residential language has been stricken from there to just address the non-residential zoning districts. It also says on page 6 that they are permitted within rural residential districts on parcels 5 acres or larger, and they're also required to meet the building regulations for non-agricultural buildings and accessory buildings in each respective zone, which means the same thing, that if they put a structure out there for processing, and even if it is considered to be an agricultural building, it will have to meet the size standards of a non-agricultural building. And after all that, those are the only changes.
Are there any questions from the audience on the code revisions to the zoning code?
Barb, a lot of this hinges on the special use permit process. Can you talk about that a little bit, and maybe a public hearing involved in that special use permit process?
Yes, it is a fairly expensive process because it involves a public hearing in front of the hearings examiner. So you would need to fill out the application that kind of basically goes through a set of criteria and allows you to discuss your proposal and how it doesn't fit in the area that you want to be. And it will go to a hearing. Adjacent property owners are notified, and then everybody gets an opportunity to come to that hearing. And the hearing examiner will basically sit right here and acts as a judge. And here's testimony for property owners, for proponents, from staff, and decides whether or not it is suitable for that location. He can flat out deny it, or he can allow it and put certain conditions on it, say, hours of operation or size restrictions or something like that. It gives him the flexibility to tweak the proposal to make it fit if it doesn't fit. So it's kind of a flexible process.
Is there an appeal process for the application?
You can appeal the hearing examiner's decision to Superior Court.
Is that an existing process that applies to other industries also, that already exists, or would it be unique and special to the marijuana industry?
Everything here is specific to marijuana.
The special use permit.
It's a special use permit.
Right, but we don't require special use permits for everything in our 5 zone. But yes, special use permits are used throughout.
But there are other businesses that would require a special use permit in an R5 zone that would follow that same process you just described.
Depending on the situation, yeah.
It would be, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be the same process if you were building a dock. They're on a saltwater dock or off and taken to the hearing.
Thank you for that example.
Any other questions for staff? Back here.
Thanks. Is a hoop house considered an outdoor grow operation? Yes.
Sir?
And when you say outdoor production is prohibited in all rural residential areas, and are you also saying that hoop houses, which are currently exempt from any building codes, that those will now require building permits? And that
They will be,
treated as a
if this is
non-agricultural
passed this
site?
way, they will be prohibited. You
Prohibited.
can't have hoop houses.
If this is passed, no hoop houses will be allowed as for outdoor production
Yes.
In rural
In
residential.
in rural residential. R5 or all 10, 20, all of them, correct?
All of them.
All of them.
When you have this now, they would need to post the building permit on the site so the neighborhood knows that what's going on.
If it's standard, all building permits are posted at the site.
One of the issues the agricultural bill, over the years, the agricultural industries have been trying to make it easier to keep agriculture a viable industry. And so they have been precluded from getting building permits and these types of things to just make it easier on them. So they are not required to have a building permit. And so that's why those hoop houses did not have prior notice. So these changes would not even allow the hoop houses or even what's considered outdoor grow. And so all buildings would be required to have a permit.
So on indoor processing, on page 5, it looks like indoor processing, commercial only, but then I see on page 6 where it might be allowed without a special use. Am I correct on that? We're talking about
For
indoor.
licensed processors, I don't have the same requirement, and that's at the discretion of the board if they want. If I was unclear on that yesterday, and I need to fix that, if you want processors alone to obtain a special use permit in R5.
I'm reading on page, just for my point of clarification, on page 5, it looks like processors, just in general, rural commercial only, but then on page 6, in red, it's kind of saying that they're permitted. So that's my, yeah, can we
Yeah.
clarify?
So yeah, the separation of, we pulled out residential specifically in both processors and producers to address the special conditions on those activities in residential areas.
So,
One of the things we've heard is, going through this process, we found a lot of things that we didn't know. For example, the hoop houses.
yeah,
No matter what we would have done in all the planning, that hoop house on Silk Road would have happened because it didn't even fit within the parameters. We didn't know that because it was exempt. This situation, one of the things we found when we were looking through this process on the processors is they were not controlled by the same tier regulations because they don't have a tier. So they could go on RR5 and have a giant building. We decided, or we thought as a commission, it would be wiser to keep it to the structural size limitation that a normal residential building would have. which is why it's put in there. So it is, in this, it is allowed there, but it can only be in a small.
Special use or no special use?
This does not include special use, but maybe that's something we need to talk about after.
Okay, that's like I said, that's based on my testimony today, I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
Any other questions? Rebecca?
Yeah, maybe you can help Barbara. In the draft that I pulled off yesterday online, there was a definition for rural character in sub R, and that's missing.
That was removed.
That was removed. And is there a reason for that?
I'd be happy to answer that from my own personal reason. A definition of rural character is a very important definition, and that has not been fully vetted. The definition that had been suggested to us, I felt didn't really reflect Mason County's rural character, and so my hope is to have the Planning Commission address that eventually, because we need it for even broader reasons. It needs to be legally defensible, and we need to be very, very careful about how we define that for Mason County, because that will be the baseline for any growth management plan appeals, potentially some land use appeals. And so, as much as we tried to, that was suggested as a way to help the staff on reviewing a special use permit application. It was just too important to have that done correctly, because it would reverberate throughout the entire code.
I was under the same understanding when we were looking at it. The actual description was not a true description of I thought could even be used legally for stopping. It was a zero loss, net loss description. But bear in mind, one of the reasons why we put this, why we suggested putting the special use permit in, was because we have an understanding or a belief that there's going to be some changes, such as including a proper definition of that and a requirement of that in the future. And there's a few other things that will eventually probably be required for those that are coming in after the fact now, not the ones that are grandfathered, although there's been some discussion about lighting and having an effect on grandfather on that. But that's why we're doing the special use permit, because we expect this will be growing and changing as we learn.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much for your work and for the Planning Commission's work on this. We appreciate your efforts, and the public for weighing in both at the Planning Commission level and at this Board of Commissioner level. So we will open up for public testimony. Would somebody hand me the sign-in sheets so that I can call back your sign-in? Folks have time to assimilate some of these changes. Thank you to KMAS for alerting people that there would be some revisions, and hopefully everybody got a chance to review them in a timely fashion. I'm going to first call the people who did indicate they wanted to testify, and then we'll go through and see if there were others. Mark Sylvester.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Mark Sylvester. I'm with Staffy's Garden. We're located at 1001 East Mulaney Creek Road here in Shelton. And appreciate having this to review, although I wish we had more time to do that. But I'm here to ask you to not accept the outdoor prohibited production, especially in the rural 10 and 20 acres. 10 and 20 acres, 10 acres are roughly 400 and some thousand square feet. A tier 2 is 7,000, perhaps 10,000 square feet if that is lifted with the state. And that's a pretty insignificant amount on a 400 and some thousand square foot property. To require absolutely none and to have structured buildings to do that, I just think that is something that should be allowed. There are other outdoor production, different agricultural products. I understand that this isn't one of those that's agricultural. With the hoop houses not being allowed for the larger acreage properties, I just think that it's taken a step towards this legal business that is going to prevent a lot of businesses from, doing, illegal business. And I'd ask that you remove that. The setbacks, originally, they were gonna be set for 150 from the property line, which essentially would put your 10-acre parcels out of business. Most of your properties here in Mason County are rectangular. A 10-acre lot is typically 325 by 1,325. Even the 100-foot buffer is gonna challenge a lot of businesses with other setbacks that are required for fencing and buildings and whatnot. So I like the 100-foot from a structure, even 150-foot from a structure, from a neighboring structure. That was great, but from a property line, and all other setbacks are from the structure. So I'd like to maybe reconsider that also. And I appreciate the hard work that everybody's done in this. I know it's not an easy job for Barbara. I know I've had several conversations with her about things. I've done a lot of research, and I hope you reconsider the outdoor production prohibited.
Mr. Sylvester, do you
Yes.
plan to do outdoor production?
Yes, we did, yeah. We wanted to do indoor and outdoor seasonally. We did want to use the hoop houses as a, protection for the product. So, yeah, on a large lot, out in the middle of nowhere, and I would encourage you, if you'd like to come out and take a field trip, it's in your district. It's a large, very secluded area. Much to the rural community, we want to keep that rural. I know it's not in here anymore, but we like to keep that conformity of the area, not to have a prison-like atmosphere that some of them have. So,
one of the worries that we have when it comes to the outdoor grows is, yours may be seasonal, but others may not. And weather around here is a little unpredictable. A good snow comes, it collapses. There's a great worry, aside from the effect that the light has on everybody, there's a great worry that if it falls or is destroyed in some manner, that they pick up and they leave. What do you think about the concept of bonding before you even go into that arena? A bond that would guarantee the removal of all the equipment or all the stuff
the dilapidated facility. I guess I would like to see the language on the cost of that bond. Is it based on the cost of the structure? Is it, is it $1 million bond that's going to put other people essentially not able to meet that requirement? I think in this industry that a lot of people are going to take great care to protect their properties and protect their production. And I don't see that we have people that would pack up and leave with the investment that they have. It's not easy to find property. It's not easy to find a spot to do that. And a lot of hoop houses now are great structures. They can withstand, a great deal. A lot of them are constructed for eastern specifications where you have a good load on them. And I guess I'd like some more language on the cost of that bonding and what all is entitled on that. Is it just a few $100s for someone to come out and remove some poles and some vinyl? Or is it a huge production?
Well, no. Like I said, these are some of the questions that come up, and I was just wondering how you felt about that, if that ever became an option. I have no intention of bringing that forward today, but this thing will be living and breathing. I don't feel we'll be seeing this often. I just was curious about your opinion of that.
I would like to see more language on it, but I'm not pleased with that either. I don't think that's really necessary.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Davis, you have a question mark?
I'm no longer.
The question mark.
Yeah, Tom Davis, 170 West Bushy Road. A couple of things I'd like to consider, and there was some discussion about the 100-foot buffer to the property line. It's another restriction on a property owner, and that doesn't seem to be a popular position these days. Also, when you define the rural characteristics of the county, you need to keep in mind that this is an opportunity, it's not a burden. What we have is the amount of area that was allowed for marijuana production is going from 3 to 8.5 million feet, my understanding is, and a lot of counties are saying, no, we don't want it. They're challenging whether or not they can actually prohibit it in their counties and cities. And to me, while that might, you might have a different sense of this, that smells opportunity. when you have the area of production that's allowed increasing, and you have the people who are willing not to, or trying not to go into the business increasing, that's opportunity happening. The benefit to this for the community is as a cottage industry. That's why I got on board. Not for big marijuana producers to come in here, and that's fine, if that's what's going to take place. But we have very few job opportunities here, and this was a job opportunity. And once you take the moral aspect out of it, and all the rest of the superfluous opinions out of it, it's an economic opportunity that people who live in a rural area can participate in, and possibly, the irony doesn't escape me, lower the crime rate by being able to participate in this industry. This is just the law, so I'd hate to see you put any more impediments to discourage this. Again, I guess what I want to leave you with is that this is not a burden. And I admire this commission for constantly sticking with it and evolving over some very difficult and very critical elements and components of this. But that's, it doesn't come easy. When these opportunities avail themselves, a lot of people run for the hills. You stuck with it, and it will pay off. I just encourage you to stick on this path, because we need the jobs and we need the income. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Avery.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Diane Avery, and I live on Sells Road, 70 Southeast Sells Road. Late Sunday afternoon, my grandson was over, and my husband was helping him change the brakes in his car. And they went for a ride to test the brakes, and as they drove, when you first enter the first loop of Sells, they went down around the corner, and as soon as you turn the corner, this odor of marijuana, and I know all the testimony that said they have filters, we're not going to smell anything, was so strong, it was embarrassing. And after my grandson left, my husband came down the house and he says, get in the truck. And we went up there, and I don't know what we were doing. We turned the corner, and it isn't, if a lot of you that are listening, you think, okay, they could smell it. This wasn't the smell. This was a stench. This was so strong, you feel like you want, get me out of here. I mean, I think my clothes, the car's gonna smell. It was horrible. It's not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And you need to come out and see the result of your vote. You disregarded, I heard you say, I don't believe the state report that said this will happen. The surrounding properties will not be able to enjoy outside activities during the budding season or whatever. I don't know how often that is, but it's one time a year is not acceptable. We're having a big event at our house in a couple of weeks. I'm just embarrassed if they can smell that. And now I've heard it's clear back on Lynch Road. It just depends on which way the wind is blowing. And what else do you not believe about the state report? The contamination to the beach 1,000 feet away? And I know you have some facts now. You need to come out and you need to smell this. You wouldn't have voted for it if you smelled it. It's not fair to us, and out of the taxes that these houses, these waterfront houses across the road pay to the county, and it's a lot. It's a lot of your budget. There's a whole lot of property there, and it's expensive taxes. And we have this, and I don't know anything about politics, about how you guys run all this, but I do know that you need to fix this. It's not right, it's not acceptable, and however, you need to fix it.
You've heard some of what I had said, obviously, in previous meetings, and so one of the things I did assure people was that any odor issues can and should be reported to the Lake Area Clean Air Agency. They will be investigated. There are standards by which they measure what is an acceptable amount of odor and what isn't on various, they do this for all industries. Should they find that a commercial operation does not meet the air quality odor standards, they will be required to have filtration. So that, I'd be happy to make the call.
Have you ever
I
been
mean,
to our
I mean,
community?
yes, I have. And I can go out there and I can do the smell myself, and if I feel like it's something worth reporting, I would, but I would also encourage you to consider that outlet as well.
And we'll do that. But, I mean, there isn't a human being alive that would live there. There isn't a human being, even if you enjoyed marijuana, that would want to smell the harshness of this. It wasn't just a smell, an aroma, it was strong, and it's not right. And it, you know, I don't know why that happened when you said it wasn't gonna happen, but whatever, please do
I
something
don't think
about
I
this.
said that.
Pardon?
I don't think I said it wasn't going to happen. I said
You
that there
didn't
was
believe the
a
state
outlet.
report.
for what I didn't believe was increased murders were gonna be a result of it. That's
Well, the whole
report.
report, I'm gonna go back and look, I don't know, but the men that got up here, and I appreciated the business opportunities in Mason County. I wonder what kind of other businesses that we can't measure are not going to come to Mason County when we're turning into this huge production that's gonna have some negative effects. And this one, it's just, please take a look at this.
Kathy Gershon.
Thank you, Commissioners. Kathy Gerchak, 571 Southeast Sales Drive. And looking at this today, I'm actually very happy. Thank you. I was at all of the planning meetings. We stayed till like 11, almost 11 o'clock the last night. And I waited through it with them. And so I'm very happy about actually some revisions I've seen since that meeting. I was thinking I was gonna come here and say we needed to maybe change some of the things. The 150 versus 100-foot setback, I know that was changed. I wanna enjoy 100% of my property, not just the, point of my door. We bought almost 2 acres because we wanted 2 acres. The smell, I'm the house right behind it, I'm downwind. I've been smelling it for about a month now, and it's not enjoyable. And my children know what it smells like, and they shouldn't have to know. But they're like, Mom, I smell the pot again. Mom, I smell the pot again. And it is skunk-like. So the 100-foot setback, I like the 150, but 100 will do. I like the special use. My only concern is on the processing side, that be also either commercial completely or special use in all cases, because Sandy Best and Marty Best aren't here today, but our children went to their Best Memories Learning Center when they were younger, and they are at the 500 block of Grandview, and as those who followed the news last year know what happened next door to them when someone was processing the oil and the hemp oil, and it exploded at 1 p.m. and their kids just happened to not be on the playground next door, but glass came flying through, and it sent 4 people to the hospital. So processing can be very volatile of this. This is not making chocolate or just a bakery product. If they're gonna process it, they can process it in a way that's very volatile. So I would like to see that either in completely commercial, not in residential at all, or for sure with the special use as well. And as far as the jobs, we can see right into this property. It sits down in a bowl, so I can look out and see right in there. It's just been these 2 guys this whole time. There's been no other employees coming in, and they have a tier 3 facility. So these jobs, they might say they're gonna hire, and they might hire temp work or here and there, but let's be honest about it. Until we see the jobs, let's not bank all of our community on these jobs that may or may not materialize. And as Mr. Bloomquist was talking about, he'd like to maybe, I think this opens a can of worms if I wanted to open some other kind of processing kind of facility in residential, I probably wouldn't be able to. So we don't want to discriminate, but we also don't want to give special, I don't think we should give special consideration either. And then the last thing is the the tiers, I like those. But, oh, just to remember, this property was a 10-acre. So I like these, I don't wanna throw these out, I don't wanna get any more liberal with these. But this property that we're talking about, the reason we're here, the reason that this all went through and we're trying to rethink this is because of Sells Drive. I mean, in big part. And Sells Drive, that address was a 10-acre parcel until they subdivided and gave 5 acres to their son. So, you wanna look at our property and say, can this happen again in that property if they had not subdivided, because that was the original address. And can it be smack dab right in the middle of this bowl, down in this neighborhood where all these people live and we're here. So, it looks good because it's special, it looks like it's special use, but just remember that Sells Drive, like I said, that facility was 10 acres before, so, thank you very much.
First of all, you are correct, a lot of this is because of Sells Drive. There's no doubt about it. It brought all of these things forward that we had never even thought of. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. It's just needed to look at. One thing I noticed that you said that you looked down there, there's 2 people and you overlook it. Have you seen any of the traffic impacts that we were warned about, or the crime, or?
No, like I said, it's pretty much the two trucks that come in, and they don't live there. They live right now. They live in Tacoma still, but they come in, and then the parents come down, and that's about that I've seen. And I'm home. I'm an at-home mom, so I would see traffic like that. I don't believe they're in the point where they are ready for product to go out, so that could change the traffic pattern. They have, whoever they're, I don't know how the process goes, but that will be soon to see. But yeah, so far, as far as manpower on the facility, it's pretty much the 2 guys and the parents that come down from the other parcel. So.
Well, I have signed up for public testimony. Is there anybody whose name I did not call? Sir.
I might have signed on the wrong form, I'm sorry.
Oh, then over?
Or I didn't mark a box maybe.
Okay.
My name is Paul Vaughn. I'm with Rootworks. We have an indoor facility on 190 West Pine Acres Way here in Shelton. We are in an industrial park, so our business, myself personally, am not impacted by this, but I would like to give the commission my opinions. You guys have put a lot of work in on this. And I've been to most of the meetings, although I missed some, and I have been recommending some moderate things, and I would actually like to change some of my recommendations. This is an industry, it is a legal industry, and there has been a lot to learn about this, for myself included. And some of the issues have turned out to be fears that were unfounded based on misinformation or misunderstandings. Some of them have turned out to be legitimate. And I don't know if I can ask you guys, but the state report, I've been looking for that, and I cannot find a source or the department of that report that's been passed around here a couple of times. So if anybody knows of a way to validate that report, I would like to hear that. But my recommendation is look at the legitimate issues, and make them, and deal with the issues, but don't label them as marijuana. I've been told that mushroom farms can be extremely smelly. The people could have sold this property in Sells Road and had a mushroom farm there, and they would have had issues with smell. My neighbor, her daughter was murdered, and now she's afraid of the night, and she wants to put up stadium lighting. What if she had bought there and wanted to put up stadium lighting around her house? That would be a legitimate issue. There are lots of, it is, I don't know if there's a correct term for it. Let's say it's a vice industry. But somebody could try to open a brewery or a distillery on a piece of property. All of those have issues, and they are legitimate issues. The other thing that could happen is next month there might be a new industry that has issues. So my recommendation is label as little as you can in your rules to a specific industry like marijuana, and write rules that define Mason County's culture and rural definitions. If lighting is an issue, write lighting rules. If odors are an issue, write odor rules. Otherwise, you might end up writing an odor rule for a distillery, an odor rule for a mushroom farm, an odor rule for a marijuana farm, it could get extremely complex and burdensome for the county to maintain, and I do like this county, and so I recommend that you look at the legitimate issues, which some are legitimate issues, and deal with those. And then if you leave the marijuana and just, its kicker is, it needs to go into a special review, whatever that word was, special review process, that would force people to look at the rules for the rural county 5 and deal with it. And that's what I would do. I would recommend that you just use a special use permit process for it and write rules that it has to apply with, but other businesses also have to comply with. So it would be consistent. Thank you, Commissioners.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much for your comments, and I will see if I can get you a copy of what I have gotten, and I believe it was the SEPA, State Environmental Protection Act review of the rulemaking process.
Oh,
I will see if I can get you.
thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Mr. Bloomfield. Former Commissioner.
Yeah, or Bloomquist. Whatever's appropriate. Steve Bloomfield, I live at, on Donovan Road in the southeast part of the county. It comes down to, and I know Tim was very, very, very active in the growth management process, and as was Terry in a different manner, but, and Randy has been a recipient of growth management's dictations to us on how we zone our county and how we use our county's lands. We all have a little different take on it, good, bad, or indifferent, whether we support it or not. The zoning, rural residential has a meaning. And we are altering that meaning by allowing these cottage businesses to take place. I look at this as more than cottage industry, if the guy's employing people. There's a little difference in it, and there's different designations within growth management where these places might fit. Maybe in industrial lands, maybe in commercial lands, maybe even inside a lamourette or a hamlet situation, but rural residential speaks volumes. We shouldn't forget that.
Thank you. I was on the planning commission when we adopted the home cottage industry authorizations in residential areas. They did assume that there would be employees and parking needs and those sorts of things. My comment is that growth management stripped rural communities of their character by not allowing cottage industries or industry like we do here. Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Sir.
Good morning, my name is Joseph O'Connor. I'm really confused about this whole process. The piece of property that we bought was a Christmas tree farm. We're been there for 40 years, had all kinds of employees there, seasonal, everything for 40 years. It's been that way for 40 years. The land that we're trying to grow on has been growing Christmas trees for 40 years. People have been going up and down there, cutting them, killing them, growing them, just like we're going to do. Agriculture by the state of Washington hasn't been defined yet legally, not marijuana. The governor said he did not want to do it under agriculture, but the Attorney General of the state said he wasn't for sure they could do that. You're prosecuting everything under the assumption it's not agriculture. State law has not defined it yet. You're putting yourself in a position to be sued because you're defining something that has not been defined by the state of Washington. And the governor's on this. I recommend until you get that process finished, you leave that word alone. Agriculture right now is agriculture. You're saying marijuana is not agriculture. The state hasn't defined what marijuana is yet. You're gonna take the lead on it? Right now, my business license by the state of Washington for marijuana is under agriculture. My UBI number is under agriculture. I filed for that under agriculture. You're telling me that my business license is not legal now?
No.
That's what you're saying.
No.
Agriculture is agriculture.
Yeah,
You have to have it defined by the legal department. They haven't done that yet.
this doesn't affect any of the existing permits and businesses and stuff.
What I'm saying is, I've been in business since 1998 in Washington State. I have a home care agency that I just sold in Tacoma. I sold that so I could get out of that business and do that. I employed over 300 employees. My name of my agency was AAA Residential Services. So I've been a businessman since 1998 in this state. I came to Mason County because I thought there was business, agriculture, business. If you do that 100 foot back, everything that we've done is basically taking everything away. I mean, if you want growth, regulate it. If you want business, regulate it. Rural Mason County has always been rural business out there. Christmas tree farms, they're known for it for hundreds of years, all right? You're saying that hasn't been happening out there? Everywhere you go, you see it. And now you're saying that's not what this county's about? I don't understand. Agriculture is agriculture. State of Washington has not defined marijuana as not agriculture. They have not taken my business license away and told me I need to reclassify my UBI number. They have not done that. That is taking a step. Before the state of Washington defines it, Mason County, in my opinion, is taking a step. Without legal counsel, you're going to be sued. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else that would like to address the commission?
Good morning, Commissioners. Jean Leonard, South Drive resident. I want to thank the Planning Advisory Commission as well as the Commission for listening to your constituents in Mason County. We're not, none of the objections that I've raised with this commission or elsewhere are morally based at all. It has only to do with environmental impact. We were talking about the rural, the definition of rural residents and what that means to all of us. I was pleased with the definition of what the rural character meant because I think that's what most of us have testified to. In the middle of our residential neighborhood to have a commercial industrial operation that looks like a prison because of state law requirements that has to be fenced and covered and lit and all of those other things that the liquor board is requiring. It doesn't fit the rural nature of our neighborhood. So I really appreciate the fact that you're looking into that in rural residential. I want to commend you for acknowledging that that type of operation is not a rural residential neighborhood kind of thing. Anywhere else in the county, please be successful. Please bring economic opportunity, get the criminal element out, whatever you can, just not in the rural residential neighborhood. So I commend you for taking that step on the outdoor grow operations because they are currently impacting our neighborhood. It's just real. I'm sure you'll see it when you drive by, or smell it when you drive by, or feel it. It's actually a heavy pressure kind of a smell. It's kind of interesting, overwhelming when I jog by and it's like, whoa, it's amazing, it's different. And I again have no moral objection at all, but I wouldn't want that to go on there either. You're right. Marijuana is different. You are entitled to do zoning, and that's what you're doing. You're undertaking your obligation as a county to establish the zoning regulations. A lot of people, I think, initially thought that others were going to be taking care of some of these issues, like the environmental impacts, and they're not yet. It's a growing area. The state, other counties, other jurisdictions are learning along with us. One comment I'd like to make is I would recommend that in addition to prohibiting outdoor grow operations in rural residential, that you look at prohibiting processing for the reasons that Kathy mentioned earlier. I think we're not quite aware of some of the dangers that may occur to residents in your communities because of processing in the middle of neighborhoods. So I would suggest that the processing also be prohibited in rural residential, at least at the 5 acre level. and that any other, if you choose to move forward on rural residential processing, that it should also be subjected to a special use permit. Because I think that gives you an opportunity to review the surrounding community and determine whether or not it's a good place to site one of these facilities. Again, mostly I just wanted to thank you for listening. It might be too late for our neighborhood at this point because it's already grandfathered in. But we, I think our whole neighborhood is very appreciative of all the time and commitment you've put into listening to our concerns.
Anybody else that would like to testify? Nobody else? Close the hearing, or testimony, close the hearing. Commissioner discussion.
I'm gonna answer to some of the things that have been brought up. First of all, Kathy and Jean, after looking at it again, I think you're correct. Go through with this, I'm gonna be requesting that we at least add a special use permit onto the processing in the rural residential areas. Bear in mind also though, and I do recognize that was one of my original fears when we talked about that the last time, is especially after the exposure. But processing also sometimes is just as simple as the weighing and packaging of the product. And so we have to be aware of that. My greatest concern was the food aspects of it, because I know some things that go into that. Let's see, with Joseph. I understand what you're saying when it comes to it being agriculture. This is a giant balancing act that we have to do, but I do want to remind you that this is a little different than agriculture. They do not require the special fencing around begonias. They do require it around marijuana, so there is differences, and the state does recognize that there are differences. Is there a possibility of use? Absolutely, and we have to consider that, but we have a lot of other aspects that we have to consider, and we walk a fine line and try to do the best that we can with what we have to take care of all the neighbors, including your ability to do business. The 100-foot setback. Originally the 150, I recognize myself that basically can stop most anything in a 5-acre tract, just because of the size that's allowed. It's still, even at 100, will stop quite a few of them. And the reason why the setback, and I'll just be honest with you, it is to limit the ability to put it in residential. A lot of those 5-acre parcels in residentials will not be like this, they will be like this. And that was done on purpose, because that's gonna be the most valuable property. You're trying to get a certain amount of footage. And it's one way that we're looking at just trying to protect the people that are doing, because again, it does have an impact, whether we like it or not. It's not the same as begonias and daisies. There is a difference, and the fencing and stuff. There's things that we're looking at still as a commission, and that's why, as I said earlier, the special use permit. And none of the things I'm about to say or saying we're going to do it, but it's things that we have to continue to look at. For example, somebody brought up about the hoop houses and stuff like that. You know, I myself, that's one of my greatest concerns, and it being open, it's gonna have the greatest impact on all those neighbors that are around them. It just does, and we have to recognize that's an opportunity. It's a lot harder to protect and everything else, and I still worry, and I think it was Commissioner Sheldon who brought it up, one big snowstorm, and some of these people will go on to be incredible business people, but some of them will not. You know that too. There's some people that have never done anything or followed through with anything, and in the beginning everybody's going to do all these startups. I don't think we can afford to have these things dilapidated laying around everywhere. Somehow we have to protect, again, the community with that. And so maybe in the future we look at being able to have hoop houses in a larger location, or under special conditions, or being bonded to make sure, but not today. You know, well, I don't think we will today, but we're at least going to be open-minded and try to do the best thing that we can. The rural characteristic. I can go along with use that, but anything we put out there has to be able to be defendable, and it can't be just a feel-good statement, because a feel-good statement will be nothing but an opinion, and an opinion will be challenged all day long. And that particular one, in my opinion, was a definition that you can do nothing, including build your own house. because that will never fit the actual, as that definition was set up, the hills and valleys, that's a no net loss definition. We are talking about ways of looking at finding a way to offset neighborhoods and densities, but as I'm sure you already figured out, it's not easy. The planning commission spent a long time trying to do it, they couldn't come up with it. And you can't blame, because there's no easy answers. Certain things that we're looking at, that we have at least had discussions with, I'll give you an example. That is the Sells Road. You see the dots, those are basically homes, and then there's parcels around, okay? According to this one, there's 90, this within 1,000 feet. And we may not use that number, it may be 500 feet, but just to get an idea of a way that maybe we can look at doing something with this. 93 parcels within 1,000 feet, estimated population of 90. Okay, then you look at another one like this, which is, you know, a little farther out. There's 14 parcels that's surrounded within that 1,000 feet, 22 population. Then you have another one that looks like this, which is lightly populated, lightly parceled, but then you have a condominium type concept here, and this says 104 parcels, okay? So maybe 500 feet. These are the simpler of them that may be more realistic if we decide to go with this manner. And that's why a special use permit might allow them to say, well, hey, this doesn't quite fit, because that's, you know, one group of people right here in the corner. So just letting you know that we are looking at the different aspects. We're not closed to any of this. We're just trying to find the ways that best work without killing people off in their life savings and stopping them from doing business, but at the same time protecting the community members.
Mr. Sheldon?
Well, I haven't said very much, and trying to write down some of my thoughts here. I think people should not have to come to a hearing and get the information at the door. I think if we were going to have a hearing about this today, you should have had this well in advance. It should have been published. It should have been better worked. And I think that this whole issue has not been well worked. The public hearing part, the questions, I know we always ask questions, but when we have testimony, I think that what's happening is that my fellow commissioners are interacting with the people that are making testimony. And maybe inadvertently here, trying to either change their testimony or rebut their testimony when they're giving their testimony. I think when you come to a public hearing, what I do, I expect someone to give me their public perception, their testimony, and then I would react to it later, not interject in the center. I think that it's very difficult to remain consistent. And if you can remain consistent, I think you can control what's happening, and you can react to the citizens. I don't believe that processing and growing and retail should be allowed in a rural residential zone. I just don't think that should happen. If it starts to happen, why shouldn't an oyster grower be able to put a shucking house next to your property? Why shouldn't a mushroom farmer, that was another example, why shouldn't they be able to put it next to you? Why shouldn't an arcade come in next to you? This is why we have zoning, to try to protect property values. And I think what's happening, we'll see property values start to decline. People have called me and said, what can I do I've owned this property for 10 years, we hope to sell and get a good remuneration for our property and the improvements we made, but who will take it now with this structure next to it, with the smell that's emanating certain times of the year, with the lights that are on? I think we're hurting our neighborhoods. As far as job opportunities, there are job opportunities, I think, in this industry, but I think if we limit it to agricultural and industrial zones, we will be consistent, we will see jobs that will come along, but in the neighborhoods, it is going to be very difficult. And if we continue to make these changes, these small changes, and listen to opinion, and maybe do another change, and then another change, and another change, the time is still clicking along. And as that clock ticks, we still have 70 permits that are pending. 70 permits that are pending. So why wouldn't someone who has put their application in and waited, and now it's changed again, and now it's changed again, and changed again, why aren't they grandfathered in? Sure, they'll be grandfathered in. They'll come back and argue, we turned in our permit in a timely manner. We went through with the process. Now, where's our permit? You're changing the rules after the fact. Okay, we can't do that. The government can't do that. You're vested. So move along. And if we really want, as one of the gentlemen said it earlier, if we really want to be able to process permits faster, we have to think about what the impact of 70 permits have on our staff. That's a tremendous burden. And they seem to be taking much more time than a simple residential deck or a wood stove installation or a small retail establishment that might go in. So I really am worried about how this is going. I want to remain consistent. I think that's the hardest thing in politics, is remain consistent, because we have differences of opinion about this, but I really maintain that if we limit the processing, the growing, and the retail, at least the processing and growing, to agriculture and industrial zones, I think we will be better off, and we will serve our county better. As far as retail, this is in this section here, 17.17.008. I just don't think that the public, we're going to have 5 retail licenses in Mason County, 1 in the city and 4 outside. I think those licenses outside the city should be in urban growth areas. I don't think they should be in hamlets and crossroads. We don't know what a retail establishment will look like. You can always permit them later in smaller areas, but I would start right now and limit it to the bigger areas where we have law enforcement, we have parking, we have street lights. In some of the rural areas, we don't even have street lights, and I just don't think we should limit the retail sale to the smallest of the small communities. So thank you for listening.
An amendment?
No, that is I don't intend to make it as an amendment. I think there's too much wrong to fix with the amendment process to this document today.
Your recommendation?
Recommendation would be made in the form of a motion.
I appreciate the work everybody's put into this, and appreciate the efforts, Commissioner Netherland, to try to work out something that was workable. And I agree that, trying to, let me just start at the beginning. The reason that I had thought that this, we probably should allow this in the rural residential areas, because we do not have enough industrial area just for the type of industries that are needing to come here. We just had a land use analysis done of our industrial lands, and there's hardly any that have that are larger than 2 acres. We have even less agricultural land. Most of this county is zoned residential, and so we needed to provide an opportunity for people to be able to go into this industry. Then we had to identify, is this an agricultural industry or is this an industrial type industry? And this kept evolving between a year ago and now. Farm Bureau determines it's a agricultural industry, but the more successful growers are doing it indoors in a somewhat light industrial fashion. The outdoor grows, I appreciate the fact that people are going to try that, but I've been studying and following that it's hard to get a product that will be approved in an outdoor grow situation, especially in the wet temperatures here. So it was, by allowing it in rural residential areas was
an acknowledgement that there needed to be some area in the county that this could be done, rather than trying to say, yes, we're allowing it, but we don't have any place really for you to go. So then that means we have to put some boundaries and parameters around it, and I feel like we've done a lot of work to try to meet everybody's needs here. And I think that we this should probably be ongoing, you know, despite your desire to see this done once for all, and then just let it work, because this is an evolving industry as well. I think that we probably might need to consider the type of processing that is going to be utilized when we determine where it would go. And perhaps a special use permit in all rural residential areas would be a way for us to look at the type of processing. I'd be more than happy to continue this hearing to allow folks to have an opportunity to review the changes that were made as late afternoon. We have to have a way to be able to put our own fingerprints on it, besides right up here at all times, because you do need an opportunity to review those changes and the potential impacts of those changes. But I think we've done some pretty good work here. I agree that outdoor grow should not be allowed in rural residential areas. And I'd be willing to entertain a motion.
I would like to clarify a few things first, Commissioner. Is Edward Melillo in here? He's an attorney that contacted me. I just want to clarify, I've had no ex parte communication with anybody in this room in regards to this. I want to make that clear. I didn't call any of you at home. I didn't have any. So I want to clarify that, Commissioner. It didn't even happen. Okay, anything that occurred, you saw occur here. As for grandfathering and the ones that have applied, we are creating a situation of consistency. When we did the moratorium, we put everything on upheaval. By doing it this way, the way we're doing it, we are creating a business environment that based on consistency. And the people that have already applied, they are grandfathered already. That's just the way that is. So we have consistency. We're not going back and slamming them and changing them. So I needed to clarify that and make that really clear. With that being said, Commissioner, I'd like to bounce this off you before I need to make a motion. I know that I would like to add an addition when it comes to creating a special use permit requirement. What about restricting on a standalone, because if it's already with a production, then it's going to be different. But a standalone processing, restricting 5-acre parcels or less, or 5-acre parcels, so that they cannot do food or oil products or something along that line. It's one thing to have one that is weighing, measuring, packaging, but if they are doing a food product, they should. And we talked about this before. Maybe they should be looked at to have some special restrictions, and that's where if they're extracting the oils. I understand that's where the dangers come in for. Motions. I can do it again, but I don't think I did it very well the first time. So I'll try to do it better.
This is what I don't like to do. These things right up here, it's because we don't have the opportunity to look at the language, study all the and of versus a the. You make all the difference in the world.
Well, for the moment, I'm okay with just having the special put in, but it would, I think, it would be more beneficial if we were to restrict the production in the processing of food products and oil products.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is that under section 1717-007, we require that producer licenses
Require a special use permit
in rural residential
in
areas.
rural residential.
And do you want to add language around the type of processing?
I don't know, do you feel comfortable with that? If you're uncomfortable with it, we can wait to go through it, we'll look at other things. I just think You have a recommendation, Barbara?
Are you addressing all
If rural residential,
5, 10, and 20,
licensed processors,
in all rural residential
yeah.
districts?
You require
For
a special
extraction.
extraction, that's the word I was looking for.
Need a permit, they should have to get a fire department extraction permit, that's what it should be. Try to-
They have to.
The fire code would take care of that.
I think it does.
It does,
I
correct.
think it already does.
Because the issue she's talking about was a medical marijuana
At home
explosion,
operation.
an at-home explosion. The new system maybe is.
That would not be.
In the city.
It's a
But the extraction
It
for
has
oils
to
and
be
stuff
a-
like that is where the dangers do come in.
But also, they're requiring certified extraction equipment.
The
You have to
liquor control
provide
board.
the liquor control board certified extraction equipment. You can't just cook it up
Well,
until.
then for now, we'll
And
leave it
Mason
just,
County Fire Department is also
we'll
correct.
leave it just like it is, we'll look at it and make sure.
Yes, they're fire code guys, yeah.
Well, definitely, I still would, yeah.
Jeremy Hicks is requiring like a permit from the fire department to put it in.
Well, Madam Chair, I move that we, I move for the changing of our Title 17 code to include all changes as presented with an inclusion of an addition to 17.17.007 to require a special use permit for all licensed processors within the rural residential districts.
And Randy, how about the bonding that you issued that you raised earlier?
We're not even doing we're not even allowing the hoop houses now. They're not
No,
even allowed.
no, the processing, I'm talking about the processing.
Oh.
If they're bonded, if there's a hazard, they should be bonded.
Yeah. But we have to find out more about that, but again, I think we're gonna be looking at that right away. I definitely don't know enough about it to add any words to it.
Or maybe you have an engineer with you.
I'm not the chair, sorry, the
Okay,
chair.
we need to stop the conversation please right now. I think we need to, this needs to be in the commissioners, and I would be in favor of continuing this if that would be a consideration, or there's the motion. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second that motion. It's been moved and seconded that the Board of County Commissioners adopts amendments as proposed in Title 17, Chapter 17.17 of the Mason County Code regulating the production, processing, and retail sales of recreational marijuana, and include in Section 17.17.007 the requirement of a special use permit in rural residential areas. Is there any discussion?
Well, I'm not gonna vote for it, because I think the process is flawed here. It seems more like a stream of consciousness than a public hearing. A public hearing is more structured. It has written amendments. It has more public scrutiny of the documents that are before you. It has more opportunity to testify. And from where I sit, it appears to be something that is just done on the fly. We'll catch it and do it on the fly and fix it later. And I just don't think that is in the best interest of the citizens of Mason County, and especially those that live in a rural residential area that may see their property values decline considerably if this is adopted. Thank you.
Madam Chair, with all due respect, Commissioner, I think we have put in the time, and we are putting in the time, we're continuing to put in the time. I think our planning commission has put in the time, and then they put in the time again. I know of no other process except for the one that we're using that we do any of this stuff in. I don't even know one that exists since the time I've been, you've been here a lot longer than I have, maybe you know of a different one, but except for up here, you've never brought forward another process for us to use to look at. And I don't know how to respond to that except for this is the only process I know.
I understand.
Okay.
I can count to 3.
I thank you, everybody, for your efforts to make this usable on both ends. This will be potentially amended again, despite my reticence to have the uncertainty in any kind of industry and commercial operation. It's not good for business. But this is brand new, and it has a lot of uncertainty around it. So we will, as it rolls out and as it goes into effect, we will see what types of tweaks need to happen to this code. I'm going to call this. All in favor of the motion that was stated and seconded, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
No.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Before you close it, a special thank you to our planning commission. We have a couple members here who have spent hours and hours and hours and hours on this. Very much appreciated all your homework and all your effort, and for being here.
So that closes the public hearing portion of our agenda.